Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Representative Mike Lawler from the state of New York now announcing that he will not run for governor in the 2026 election year and instead will run for re-election to the United States House of Representatives. Mike Lawler, who has long floated the idea that he wants to run for governor across the state of New York, has now backed down as Representative Elise Stefanik from New York's 21st district. She's up in upstate New York, has now indicated that she wants to run for governor in this upcoming midterm cycle. Now, there was always this expectation that Elise Stefanik was, in fact, going to run. This is an article from the beginning of the month about Elise Stefanik addressing the rumors. When people asked her from the media, "Are you running for governor?" her response was, it's not a question of if she runs for governor, but when she decides to announce it. And so with this clear indication that Elise Stefanik will be running for the governorship, the pathway to victory for Mike Lawler got that much more difficult ahead of 2026. And it's a pretty big snub to somebody who was expecting to run in a largely uncontested Republican primary. Now, if you remember, Elise Stefanik was actually meant to be UN ambassador. She had set up her time. She had done a goodbye tour in the district, had posted online about how she was thankful for all the time they gave her in Congress, and then Donald Trump, citing the GOP's tight House margin, decided to withdraw her ambassadorship, withdraw the nomination to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, eventually pushing her back into the Republican conference and giving her, honestly, less positions than what she had she not even considered taking up the UN ambassador role. And so Elise Stefanik, in many ways, has been sort of subject to very, very bad luck. I think that looking at it from that perspective, and now she's deciding that she's going to run for governor. She's done with the House of Representatives. She spent enough time in Washington, D.C., and now she wants to run for governor and become the first Republican governor this state has seen in quite some time. And the odds of her winning the governorship obviously are very low, but the point here is that Mike Lawler, too, also is now seeking re-election in the House of Representatives, which also might indicate that rather than run for governor and come in second place or maybe eke out a victory against Kathy Hochul, Lawler sees it as more beneficial for him and his political party, seemingly at least, to run for re-election in 2026. And there's a big difference. With Elise Stefanik in the 21st district, she is in a very solid district. You can see that in the last election, Stefanik won by about 24.2%. But this actually brings me to the point of why Stefanik had even been nominated for UN ambassador and had that pulled in the first place. Now, Stefanik had been one of the closest allies of Donald Trump for a very long time. She was very quick to jump on both of the re-elections in 2020 and 2024 and was a big advocate for him in the U.S. House of Representatives as the third highest ranking Republican across the board. Now, Elise Stefanik, again, having won re-election in this 21st district pretty consistently time after time again in 2024, it got to a 24.2% margin, but Donald Trump in this district only won by about 20 points. Now, you'll see here that it's 60-39 in 2020. It was a different district, different boundaries here, but 60-39 actually worried Republicans when they were looking at the inevitable special election that Elise Stefanik would face, with a Republican replacing her on the top of the ticket, running against a Democrat. Now, the thing about this is that this was announced on March 27th, 2025, and it actually is a bit interesting and no coincidence that just a day before a Democrat won in a Pennsylvania state Senate race, the Republicans had won by 15 to 20 points, depending on the race, in the last election. And so what Republicans saw was a swing that would indicate that the district currently or expected to be vacated by Elise Stefanik would end up being competitive in the special election and potentially in the 2026 midterm elections. And Donald Trump has been very particular about people running for re-election rather than running for other office, in many cases really nerfing their ability to seek higher office. Representative Zach Nunn was wanting to run for governor in the state of Iowa, but Donald Trump called him up and said, "You are not running for governor. You won your district by 4 points. We need you there more than we need you running for governor across the state." Keep in mind, Iowa is a state that Donald Trump won by 14 points. Zach Nunn would have had an easier chance of being governor, in my opinion, than being reelected to the U.S. House. And so thinking about that, I mean, his district is Trump plus 4. His state is Trump plus 14. Obviously, you'd prefer the state over the district, but Trump said absolutely not. And in a way, I think it's very possible that Lawler, in anticipation of Trump coming after him and saying that you need to run for re-election, or also facing off against Elise Stefanik, or a combination of both. He's deciding now to opt to run for re-election again, showing that he knows the race on one end, on the governor's side, is unwinnable. And I think Republicans certainly know it's unwinnable in the general election, but I think he also knows it's unwinnable in the primary. Is now opting to run for House because that race was quite close in the last election. In New York's 17th district, the district that Mike Lawler represents, Mondaire Jones ran against Mike Lawler, I think 2 times now, if I'm correct, in 22. Actually, no. So this was the DCCC seat. Mondaire Jones, who actually has been endorsing in this race, who served in the U.S. Congress, but also was running for the 2024 race against Mike Lawler. You'll find that what is interesting in this district is Lawler didn't win by a lot. I think that there's a big misconception that because Stefanik won by 21 points or 24 points, that Lawler must have won by a lot too if he was considering vacating a seat and running and using this platform, whatever it might be. He had a close race, right? This was a pretty close race. You saw that in 22. He was redistricted into, let's see if we can actually find it here, Sean Patrick Maloney, if we can scroll down to the actual race here. Sean Patrick Maloney was drawn into here. Mike Lawler was running against him as the opposition. Got elected to Congress in 22, re-elected in 24, but this was a very important race. Mike Lawler made a lot of national headlines, not just because he defeated a Democratic incumbent. There actually were quite a few that got defeated in New York, but because Sean Patrick Maloney was the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. So he was responsible for saving the Democrats in a number of districts. He was responsible for losing for some of the, he was going to be blamed and congratulated regardless of where it was because he represented on the campaign side the entirety of the House Democratic delegation. And so when he lost his election, it was a pretty, notable shift. It was something that made people very worried about the state of the race in New York and where it might be in 2024. Fast forward to 2024, Mike Lawler wins again. Now in 2026, there is an expectation that the race is going to be more competitive. It looks like here, at least based on those who are fundraising, you have tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars already being fundraised against Mike Lawler, who has raised quite a bit, but this is going to be a competitive race. The Cook Political Report has it as lean Republican, but it is a 6-point race in a national environment that is expected to swing by more than 6 points. And so Mike Lawler is going to have a tough re-election and might actually leave Congress, even though he's passing up a run for governor to now run for re-election. And in terms of his odds of winning against Elise Stefanik, they honestly weren't that great. When you take a look at those polls that were produced between Mike Lawler and Elise Stefanik and Bruce Blakeman, you'll find that Elise Stefanik constantly maintained an advantage. Siena College had her at 35%. Lawler's percentage actually went down as the months went on, from 22 down to 18 in the span of just 1 month. And he actually started out with 25% support, but there was anticipation that Stefanik would get in the race, and the more and more that we start to see it and conversation around it, Stefanik becomes that much more likely to win the eventual nomination, on the Republican side for the 2026 governor's race. Now, this will be a more competitive election than we think. Elise Stefanik will lose to Kathy Hochul if 2026 ends up being the year that Democrats hope it to be. And the chances are that it is moving in that direction. Trump's approval rating is going down, the generic ballot is expanding, and Republicans across New York aren't going to be in that much better of a position, especially if Kathy Hochul ends up redrawing the boundaries, making it more difficult for someone like Mike Lawler to win re-election in the 2026 year. And so thinking about the New York governor's race and thinking about where we are in a number of different, pockets of this state, New York did shift tremendously in 2024, but to the degree that it will elect a Republican governor, I am not convinced. Even in 2022, when we saw that Kathy Hochul, who was unpopular at the time and largely did, and was blamed for dragging down the rest of the ticket across the board, Lee Zeldin was a U.S. representative, decided that he wanted to run for governor against Kathy Hochul. The race became way more competitive than people would have thought. Kathy Hochul ended up winning by about 6 points. It was a warning sign for what might come in 2024 for Democrats. But the point that I'm trying to make here isn't that, we saw Lee Zeldin narrow it up. It was the fact that in 2022, a national environment that was quite beneficial to the GOP. Not the best. It was certainly not 2014 or 2010, but it was beneficial, and it had a Democratic incumbent who voters wanted to vote against. And Kathy Hochul was still able to win, and it shows just how deep-rooted positive Democratic sentiment is within this state. This is a blue state through and through. And so Lawler might have made the right decision deciding not to run. I also think, too, out of fear of running against Stefanik and angering Trump, as well as the fact that he might have just angered Trump if he decided to retire, too. We only have one House retirement on the Republican side of representatives who decided that they're going to back out of elected office because they don't want to run for re-election. The other 9 Republicans who have announced their retirement are now seeking higher office. And in many ways, it comes from safe districts, so Donald Trump doesn't necessarily worry about that. Mike Lawler does not come from a safe district. And so now he's going to face a competitive race regardless. If he was running for governor, he was certainly going to lose. Running for representative, he has a little bit better of a chance, but he also might lose as well. 2026 is going to be brutal. And I think for many Republicans who are in this weird position, similar to Zach Nunn, where you're dropping a governorship because you want to run for House, because you have a better chance, or you're being pushed or pressured into running House, or running for House, or you're not going to be winning the nomination, whatever the reason is. Both of these guys, Zach Nunn and Mike Lawler, might be on their way out after 2026. And so it'll be interesting to watch as we find New York, which might get redistricted too. We don't know what's going to happen there. There might be a brand new congressional map that Democrats are working with. The point is that Lawler seeking re-election to the House shows a lot about where he thinks he stands respective to Elise Stefanik, pretty much clears the race on the New York governor side. We know it's not going to be a contentious or even heated Republican primary. Elise Stefanik is going to have a cakewalk to that nomination on the Republican side. And also, too, that looking at 2026, Lawler is now facing a very tough re-election. He's going to face a very competitive House seat that Democrats have a very strong opportunity to win. Right now, are they the favorites? Probably not. They need to have a coalition. They need to coalesce around a candidate, but time is there for them to do that. But right now, it looks like Mike Lawler is going to be that Republican nominee, that Republican incumbent who decides to run for re-election in 2026. And chances are it'll be just a very close race. Not as tough as running for governor, but certainly one that might result in the same eventual result anyway, which is a Democratic victory, whether in the district or across the state. Democrats are on track for victory across many districts in New York, and Mike Lawler's district might just be that one, and it looks like he's going to go full steam ahead into running against the Democrats in a district that only voted for him by about 6 points in the last election. So very interesting to see, very fascinating dynamics going on in the New York GOP. Lawler and Stefanik, who might have had a more contentious primary, just simply won't be having it, and whether or not they work together or are able to work in tandem as they go into the same midterm election on the same ballot. Just one is on a district, one is on a statewide level. We'll have to see, because there's a chance that it doesn't. And it might fracture the New York GOP more. But it looks like full steam ahead into the re-election for Mike Lawler. No chance he's running for governor at this point. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 governor election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.